Midway through October of 1977, Antonio Di Natale was born in Naples, the capital of Italy's Campania region. Growing up in a big Neapolitan family, Toto, as he was nicknamed, was another victim to the rich football culture deeply rooted in the heart of the city, and almost as soon as he could walk, the youngster began playing in the streets and parks, where there was no shortage of similarly obsessed kids bent on realising this mutual dream. Like all desires, the teen had to chase it, moving north to the town of Empoli, where he signed onto the youth system of its major club in 1994. 17 by the time he arrived, Antonio progressed through the ranks, and after 2 years he was welcomed into the seniors before Luciano Spalletti loaned him out. Across the next 3 years, Di Natale featured in over 60 games for 3 different teams competing in Italy's third tier, returning to his parent club a poised 21-year-old, keen to earn his spot. Almost instantly, the striker hit the ground running, applying his lower league experience and converting 6 goals from 25 games, more than half of which were appearances from off the bench. Silvio Baldini's mid-season managerial takeover had saved them from sinking, yet promotion remained elusive. And into his second campaign, the coach opted to promote Toto from the stands to the starting 11, making him a regular. Fueled by the frustration at their summer shortcomings, Toto began to show different sides to his game, flexing his finishing in the face of goal, but also his versatility, content with playing anywhere across the front line and doing so effectively. Fleet-footed and difficult to mark, he could slip underneath the radar of defences with shrewd movement, and it was evident that he was becoming a more opportunistic forward. When he would bag, the Blues never lost. However, Baldini's side started to let it slip into 2002, and the holy grail of Serie A was drifting out of reach. Di Natale, who by now was deemed the club's leading prospect, wouldn't accept it, and added another 5 goals to his tally in the final months, hoisting the team clear of Napoli to at last seal promotion. Given their defensive frailties, Empoli had heavily relied on their forwards, who delivered 60 goals collectively, the most in the division, 16 of which were thrashed away by their top scorer, who had exhibited his readiness for the highest level. With a keen eye for talent, Giovanni Il Trapattoni gave him his first international cap for Azzurri that November, by which time the marksman had already converted his first ever top-flight goal, a second, third, and 3 assists, as Empoli enjoyed a decent Serie A start. The aim of every promoted side is simple enough in concept: don't drop down. And this was no different for Baldini, but quickly reality caught up with them, and Italy's heavyweights gave them some humbling lessons. Yet, their star seemed wholly unperturbed, and if anything, enjoyed the underdog status. Again hitting double figures for the Tuscans, he'd scored a hat-trick for the first time in his career, and even rippled the nets of Roma, Inter, and AC Milan, single-handedly saving them from demotion. A sobering subsequent year laid ahead. 2 managerial changes in the space of a couple months left the club in disarray, stringing together merely 7 goals by the winter and plunging into the table's danger zone. An epic battle with Inter at their Castellani ended 3-2 in the Nerazzurri's favour, and sitting in 17th after the closing match day, a bad campaign had become a nightmare. Di Natale had gotten a taste of the top flight, and it whetted his thirst, but with Empoli there were no promises, and approaching his 27th birthday, it was time to move on. In northeastern Italy, nestled between the Alps and the Adriatic Sea at the heart of the Friuli region, is the city of Udine, home to a club called Udinese. The Serie A mainstay had just finished 7th, and this is where the Neapolitan opted to spend his foreseeable future. Accompanied by Empoli teammates Manuel Belleri and Emilson Cribari, his transition to life in Udine was smooth, catching Parma out with a goal in his first start at the Friuli. It wasn't long before the Udinese realised that this was a southern gift, wrapped in 1.7 metre tall packaging sent from Empoli, as Di Natale illustrated crystal clear that he was built for the biggest stage. His lightning acceleration and jarring change of direction perfectly suited Toto for the wide role, where he played without fuss for much of his debut year, and established an on-pitch alchemy with Vincenzo Iaquinta, the club's number 9. The 27-year-old fitted like a glove into Spalletti's team, a clinical fox in the box who also tended to pummel home some screamers. It was his personality that really won over Udine. The Neapolitan was a relentless hard worker, and he emitted such passion for his new club, even the opponents couldn't hate him. It didn't hurt that his addition had bolstered their form and pushed them into the top 4 conversation amidst serious competition. This was a different era of Italy's top flight. The last 2 Ballon d'Or winners were Serie A players, and some of the teams were essentially World 11s. Breaking into the European spots for a club like Udinese was a far-fetched fantasy. The key to making it a reality turned out to be their new number 10, who snatched up 7 league goals as they edged out Sampdoria by 1 point to join Juventus, Milan and Inter in the Champions League for the first time in the club's history. The new boy's contribution couldn't be quantified by stats. He helped balance out the 11, filling in anywhere in the offence and bringing an optimism to Friuli. Regrettably, much of that faded in what should have been a special follow-up season. Spalletti's Roman restart left Sergei Cosmi in charge, who promptly undid his good work. Tumbling from Europe's elite to its subordinate UEFA Cup after 6 group games, they fared even worse on home soil, falling into the table's bottom half. Toto did all he could to salvage their year, averaging a goal per game in the Coppa Italia, but unavailable for their semi-final fixtures against Mancini's Inter, an aggregate defeat declared their campaign an utter disaster. Typically, the summer of '06 would be the ideal time to pounce at the red-hot forward, and the Bianconeri did exactly that, looking to tempt the talent to Turin. Excluded from Europe, and just missing out on Italy's World Cup triumph, the wage increase and spotlight awaiting him at Juventus could have easily seduced him away from the relative obscurity of Udine. However, his affinity with the city had only grown with time, and now married to his first love, the Di Natales had settled here and were ready to start a family. Far from a bustling metropolis like Rome or Milan, its serenity was appealing, aligning with his humble personality and quiet demeanour, so he spurned the black and white of Delle Alpi, preferring those of the Friuli. Having passed the loyalty test with flying colours, the board rewarded him with the armband, naming him the new captain of the Zebrete in 2007. His profile was rising fast, and off the back of another standout season in the black and white, Roberto Donadoni called for his services as the Azzurri tried to qualify for Euro 2008. Down the familiar left flank, Di Natale had a hand in 5 goals on the road to his first international tournament, at which the world champions had big boots to fill. The stocky striker would be heading to Central Europe with boundless confidence. Galvanised by the pressures of the red armband, he achieved his finest goal tally yet of 17 in the league. This was his first year without Iaquinta by his side, who the old lady had made their plan B after Toto's rejection, but this was a secret blessing for the 10, escaping his shadow and permitted freedom up top, now Udinese's attacking focal point. Leading out the team as the man depended on for goals, he was in his element, trying more outrageous efforts from all over the pitch, often to thunderous applause, and in a fresh role he could also get his head up more, providing 8 assists, often for his new strike partner Fabio Quagliarella. In Austria and Switzerland, however, things didn't go to plan. Lobbed into a group of death with France and the Netherlands, a 3-0 whitewash opener at the hands of Oranje forced Donadoni to switch it up, dropping Di Natale for the remaining group matches. Escaping an early exit, the Azzurri made it into the knockouts, but Udinese's skipper again wasn't listed to start in their quarter-final versus favourites Spain. Midway through the second half, the game was still goalless, and Antonio Cassano made way for Toto, who in the remaining 15 minutes of the 90 and the half hour of extra time couldn't break the deadlock, leaving penalties. The super subs stepped up for their fourth kick, needing to beat Casillas to keep them in it, but Real's number 1 denied his low effort, sending the Italians packing. Dejected and heartbroken, he felt the guilt that had stung many of the game's greats, and not knowing how many more chances would come around, that moment could have easily consumed him. But verging on his 33rd birthday, the Neapolitan was only improving with age like a fine wine, and across the next few years it became abundantly clear that this was one of those rare players who defied the odds. When Quagliarella jumped ship for Napoli in June 2009, the captain was again cast as the lead, deployed at centre forward between two wingers who treated him as the target man, and in layman's terms, he was unplayable. From a double to secure a point on match day 1, to a home hat-trick 3 weeks later, to then a winner hosting the Rossoneri, this was the purest example of a one-man team. Moving like a fiend whose drug is goal-scoring, the man they now called their prince was burying every chance he got, no matter the distance nor angle, and his numbers were getting stupid. By the season's end, he'd accounted for more than half of the team's offensive output, reaching a career high of 29 goals from 35 appearances, the most in Serie A, winning him his first Capocannoniere and tying the tally of Didier Drogba as the runner-up in the European Golden Shoe to Messi. By comparison, the Ivorian was in Ancelotti's double-winning Chelsea team, while the Ballon d'Or holder was the talisman of one of the greatest ever club sides. Di Natale, a man in his early 30s, reached their level having barely a sniff of silverware in a team that without him would have been relegated. Two things were made certain this year. Udinese is not a strong side, but their captain is truly world class. Despite his age, the national team selectors couldn't overlook him for the squad flying to South Africa. But in maybe their worst World Cup showing to date, Italy crashed out of an easy group, and a first goal on the global stage did little to console Le Zabrette's MVP. The next season got underway, and the elder statesman showed no signs of slowing down, continuing to break the laws of nature. Consistently involved for at least 80 minutes and missing out on only 2 games all year, he was as sharp as we'd ever seen him, and found space much easier than usual, using his experience to pop up in the perfect areas, unmarked and onside. One shy of his best, it was 28 goals for this campaign, at a strike rate of 0.78, which across the continent was only trumped by 2 men, and not since Beppe Signore in 1994 had someone collected back-to-back Capocannonières. Although this time, the team as a collective were on his wavelength, and after a slow start, new appointment Francesco Guidolin kicked Udinese into shape, climbing into the top 4 with their highest ever points total. Much of it was thanks to the duo of the Prince and a 22-year-old Alexis Sanchez, who between them racked up 39 goals, amongst the most lucrative in Italy's history. It was a special alliance, so much so that Europe's elite sat up in notice. And the master had to surrender his apprentice when the Chilean's dream club stepped forward. And he wasn't alone, as a few of Udinese's other top performers followed him through the exit door. Still, almost every Guidolin acquisition stayed, so even though they lost over 60 million euros worth in players, fortunes ultimately improved, staying unbeaten until late October of 2011, with the most resilient defensive record in Europe. Spearheaded by a prolific hitman and fortified by their strongest back line in years, Udinese mirrored the late 90s times of Bierhoff and Zaccheroni, by attaining a podium finish in the league, behind Milan and Juve. Hurdling the 20-goal barrier once more, Di Natale had done more than enough for a seat on the jet to Gdansk for Italy's Euro 2012 opener. Now with Cesare Prandelli at the helm, this wasn't exactly Italy's golden generation, and expectations weren't sky high. The Azzurri's confidence was likely to be rocked from the off, thrown in at the deep end with the European and world champions Spain. Preferring a pairing of Cassano and Mario Balotelli, the coach kept Toto on the bench, but as the clock ticked on, nothing separated the teams, so the veteran was brought on, and within 6 minutes he latched onto Pirlo's slotted through ball, this time beating Casillas to take the lead. He shook off the 4-year-old demons, seizing a point from the world's best international side, and the icon of Udine continued to feature as the Italians rolled on through the groups and then the knockouts. Edging out England on pens and then drubbing the Germans, they bookended their Euros journey with a finale against La Roja, who had cruised their way to the end, conceding only that one time. Reality bites, and the reality was that Del Bosque's men were just a cut above Prandelli's, dismantling them 4-0, a killing blow for the international career of Di Natale, who decided to hang up the blue shirt after 42 caps and 11 goals inside a decade for his nation. In many ways, this marked the beginning of the end to it all, but in no way was he finished, repeating his 23-goal campaign to become the first since Gabriel Batistuta to convert 20 or more in 4 consecutive Serie A seasons. Having hit the mid-30 age mark, he was still deemed amongst Europe's elite band of strikers, so when Friulani faced a major decline, most would have accepted the €10 million annual salary and moved to the growing Chinese Super League. But then again, most don't have the kind of relationship with their club that Toto Di Natale has with Udinese, nor the age-old values of loyalty that keeps him embedded in their hearts to this day. The time finally came, and on the 15th of May 2016, the legend played his last game in the black and white stripes. Subbed on to the deafening ovation of a teary-eyed stadium, the trailing 10 men needed the influence of their captain, and when a penalty was awarded, it had his name on it. Touching it away with his signature assurance, the 38-year-old added a farewell hashmark to a club record tally of 227 goals for Le Zebrete. When the final whistle blew, the World Up Capitano waved goodbye to the fans whom he had given so much, savouring every last ounce of emotion in what was his ultimate footballing moment. Throughout its annals, Calcio has been defined by an enduring theme of devotion, and in the modern era of the sport, this value has been put to the test like never before. Antonio Di Natale's career serves as a reminder that amidst football's evolving landscape, the age-old principles still hold their place. As the milieu of contemporary football got increasingly hectic, Toto was a man to rationalise. When asked whether he regrets turning down Juventus, he said, "I fear death, not football." With the talent to justify an ego, Di Natale should be celebrated as the antithesis of the privileged superstar who shunned the spotlight for the brotherhood of a team for whom he worked exceptionally hard and never gave up on. For him, sportsmanship always took the fall. He wasn't one to badmouth or cynically foul, once receiving a Serie A Fair Play award, having sacrificed a promising attack for an injured opponent. His most notable act of kindness and humanitarian cause came in 2012, when, in the wake of the tragedy of Piermario Morosini, he assumed financial responsibility of his late teammate's disabled sister. Aware that the siblings had lost both parents as teenagers and their brother to suicide shortly after, the captain made it the club's duty to stand by her side, a true gentleman of the game. Every club has at least one iconic figure. Roma has Totti, Juventus has Del Piero, Milan has Maldini, and Udinese has Di Natale, who for 12 years fought with undying passion and unwavering loyalty, bleeding black and white to bring an invigorated sense of community and pride among the city's residents, independently rewriting the history of this 125-year-old institution. Of course, there will forever be an asterisk next to his name, addressing the lack of trophies in his cabinet and arguing he wasted his gifts. But I doubt Di Natale would care. In the rich chronicles of Calcio, there are more than a few pages written in tribute to the Prince of Udine, who as the 6th highest scorer ever in Serie A should be mentioned alongside the greats. But even if forgotten at times by the mainstream, his legacy in Udinese has been chiselled into the Alps, leaving an indelible mark on the region.